everyone, Linda Israel here, and I'm going to share with you part of the process of my making a bullet planner junk journal, if you will. I wanted a planner for next year, and I didn't like what was on the market, so I thought I'd make my own. So I've got here a weekly planner. That's a 2018 weekly planner. So you can see that it has nice size writing blocks. And I've used one of these in the Mermaid Planner Junk Journal that I shared just a few days ago. So this is what I used in that. I'm going to use the same thing for mine. Dollar at the Dollar Tree. This is a bullet journal dot paper that I picked up at Michael's for $5. So far we're at $6. I have some college rule note paper that I thought I would use for some of the pages in here. Again, this can be anywhere between 50 cents and $1 for one of these. I have a old planner that is for this past year of 2017, and it was given to me, so it was free. It was regularly $35 and clearance down to 20 something. And what I thought I would do with this is I'm going to use the tabs for the months as pages and dividers in my journal. I'm not sure how big this journal is going to be, but I do plan to try to use those as well. I printed a monthly calendar off of printacalendar.com. I went in and saved it as a different type of file so that I could print it smaller. It's designed to be a half sheet. So if you were looking at a blank sheet, it would have filled up this whole side over here. And I just printed them smaller because what I want to do is use this Calico Collage Dragonfly Delight journal cards, and I'll use a piece of cardstock and I'll make a little sandwich, and that will be a calendar in my junk journal. And then of course I'll use the pages from the weekly planner, so that'll be my planner pages. And then I've got these pages from Calico Collage that have been printed on quality laser printer. Normally I print on regular copy paper, and this time, since it's my journal and I like the feel of this paper, I don't mind that it's going to be heavier. I printed it on the quality laser printer that I got at the office supply store a while back. So I'm going to add in some old book pages and dictionary pages and make a few things for this journal as well. So I just wanted to get started by showing you some of the supplies, and as I introduce new supplies, I'll bring them in and show you. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some notebook paper to be the same size as the journal page. I'm also going to trim, if necessary, these tabs, so you don't need to watch me do that. I'm going to take apart the planner. This planner has staples, so I'll just pull these staples, and then I'm going to cut this in half, because when I put it back together, this is one signature. And I don't want to put it back together as one signature. I want to be able to choose which page goes where. And when you take this apart, this page over here, if you find it's corresponding, doesn't match. And so you have to cut it apart. Anyhow, I'm rambling. I may not use that part. And then I'm also going to take apart this journal and see if I can't get either whole 2 pages or if I'm going to get just 1 page out of it. Okay? So I just took an X-Acto knife, a straight blade, and cut between the liner paper and this first page that is holding the signatures to the cover. And when I did that, it exposes the spine, And if you flip this up, you can start to see where the signatures start and begin. And if you go in here in the right spot, we should be able to cut the threads that has these together. And they could be glued as well. Alright, I was able to pull it out. And I will look for the center. And then I will cut these threads. So I'm saving these as a full page because if I want, I can leave it this size, or I can trim it to be a smaller size to fit with the other pages from Calico Collage. So I just kind of loosely fold that. And so I may want to trim this down so it's shorter, or not shorter, not as wide as this page. So it's nice to have a full page like this to be able to work with. So I'm just going to continue working here, and I'll come back after I've got this all disassembled, and then I'm ready to start showing you the components I'm going to put inside. Alright, I've been working on this for a day now, and I'll show you what I've got so far. It's in signature form, but it's not ready yet because I've got some things I need to do. So first thing is I've gone in and trimmed the Calico Collage images to the size that is the page, and on the back side I printed on my computer the lines on the back side, and then I used a stencil to make the dragonflies. Here's my stencil that I made on my Cricut. So I just went in and found a silhouette and then repeated it randomly, and then I use this to spray onto the pages. I have taken apart the planner, and I have the pages where I want them to go just laid into the book. I'm going to use washi tape and attach them together. Then I've got some bullet page papers in here. This is the tabbed page out of the Happy Planner, and I put a piece of notebook paper on the back side and stitched it so that there is a pocket here to put things. On the other side, I plan to adhere down this piece here that I made. I took some cardstock and painted it with different colors of acrylic paint, and then over stamped it with a few stamps using gold embossing powder. So that'll go there. And then I've got more of the Calico Collage images from the Dragonfly Delight. And then here are some pages for the planner. So here's what I'll do. I'll show you how I plan to attach these planner pages to the journal. Since I'm using blues and teals, I've got some washi tape here. And the first thing I'm going to do is slide this up out of the way. I'm going to take these two pages and washi tape them together so that they can be attached to the journal page. Since it didn't have a match on the other side, I'm just adhering these two together. I should get this where you can see it. So I'm just lining these up as straight as possible. I'm going to start the washi tape right on the edge. Since I'm going to attach this to the page, I'm not going to go down the other side. I'll just trim this off, and then I'm going to fold this back together, and then I want to adhere this inside the journal. Now I'm going to here's the fold, okay? So I am away from the fold only because I'm attaching it to this other page, and I don't want it to accidentally get caught in the binding. So I'm just going to move it over just a little bit. I'm going to use the same washi tape again and start at the bottom. And I'm just noticing there's some printing on here, so I'm trying to save it in case I do need to refer to those phone numbers. I don't know that I ever will, but they're there. And I'm just trimming it even to the pages that I'm attaching. So it may not be straight, but it's good enough. And then I'm going to flip this back. And I'm going to attach it on this side as well. So that's how I'll attach any pages that don't have a match on the other side. So if we open this back up, so this page is going to get the pockets adhered, and I just noticed that I've got some spots on it, so I'm just going to use some Distress ink and kind of color in. Then I'm just going to use Aleene's tacky glue, and I will make a small bead. You know, a lot of people complain about wet glue, and the key is, I've done this for a long time, you don't need a whole lot. So I'm just barely kissing the surface. It may look like it's a lot, but it is very thin as far as the amount, and I'm kind of using the stitching to help spread it around. So that's just a small amount on there. And I'm going to adhere this to the page. And then I've made a pocket that's going to go on the other side. So I'll just adhere down two sides again. This page that I'm adhering on this side is a page out of an old book. And again, I went over it with some acrylic paint using the credit card technique, where you take a little bit of paint and then you just spread it out with a credit card. I've got a couple of videos showing you how I paint paper. It's a great way to change the color of paper that maybe you don't like, or you want to add some color to a page that may be white or ivory in color. So there's those put together. So I'm going to lay these and then pick up the whole stack. So here I have 3 pages on both sides, and I'll do the same washi tape method where I adhere these two together, because these are now going to be a page in the signature, and I'm not going to adhere them to the actual journal pages. I'm going to attach them to each other, and then it'll be like one page. And since this is going to be a page, I'll just flip it over and then continue the washi tape on the other side. So I'll continue to do this with all the pages until I have them all ready to adhere into my journal. I may not have explained this very well, but the pre-printed journal or planner that I use, I cut apart because the first page and the last page would not have corresponded in my signatures. And then I went through and figured out where these needed to go in order to correspond with the other side. And that's how I put the pages in there. So it may be another step that isn't necessary on most junk journals, but because I'm doing it as a planner and I want the dates in order that are part of the planner pages, that's why I took the extra time. So I'm going to continue to do this, and when I get done attaching all the pages together, then I will show you the next steps of putting the journal together. I have finished putting the signatures together with all the pages inside. And then I measure the signature as a group to figure out how thick my journal is going to be. So as you can see, it's pretty hefty, and I figured 2 inches should be enough. It'll kind of puff out just a little bit, but I'm not worried about that. And when I measure this, what I do is I measure it to fit from top to bottom. So there's a little bit of an overage, about 1/4 of an inch, and then about 1/4 of an inch to protect the pages. I'm not worried that the pages aren't perfect because this is my junk journal and I kind of like that look. So I cut 2 pieces. These are going to be the cover, and it is approximately, each one's going to be different, 6 1/4 by 8 1/2 tall. And then I cut a piece for the spine, and since I know I want my spine to be 2 inches and 8 1/2 inches tall, I have 3 pieces of chipboard that I'm using for the cover. Chipboard can be purchased. You can recycle old cereal boxes. This one happens to be a little bit thicker than some of the other chipboard, and I did that because I knew I was going to use this every day and I wanted it to hold up. So the next thing that I do is I get a piece of fabric or paper. This case is going to be fabric, and I cut it to be approximately 1 inch or 2 inches, if you want to say, if you were to cut from the corner here, bigger than my cardboard pieces. So as you can see, it's about 2 inches. And then I have the ability to then place this in the center of the journal. So I'll get this lined up to be in the center of the fabric. And then I'll use Aleene's tacky glue. It works really good on fabric and paper to adhere it together, and you don't want a whole lot. You want to keep this a thin amount, but you want to cover this whole piece of cardboard so that it doesn't come loose from the fabric. And I'll just pop this in here in the center, and I'm just pressing with my hand. The glue might go through the fabric, so depending on the surface that you're working on, you may want to lift it up as soon as you glue it down, or you want to put a protective surface so that it doesn't stick to other paper. And I'm going to repeat this by putting more glue on the cover. And then I want to place this a smidge away from the other. Now you can do this by putting a piece of chipboard in between, and then that's your guide, if you will, so that you don't get it too close to the spine piece. And the reason being is that if you get it too close, then your book won't come up, it will bow. And so if you want it to actually work properly, leave a little bit of a gap. I'm just repeating the process for the other piece of the cover. So here's the beginnings of the cover. I know that I want to put a piece of this iridescent ribbon over the cover. So what I'm doing now is lining it up to be in the center, so that when I am ready to use this, it'll be all ready to go. And what I'm going to do, just to kind of help keep it in place, is I'm going to take my sewing machine and just zigzag stitch really close to the edge on the top and the bottom. That way I know it won't shift on me while I'm folding over all the edges. I just did a quick stitch just to hold this in place. I'm okay with it being loose here because I plan to do some other sewing on it later. I'll flip it back over, and the next thing I'm going to do is, again using Aleene's tacky glue, is I'm going to start folding in the edges and gluing in place. So what I like to do is start on the corners. I don't know, this is just the way that I like. I've learned lots of different methods over the year, and this one seems to work the best for me. So I'll just apply a little bit of glue on the corner of the fabric and fold it down so that it stays into place, and it gives you a nicer corner when you do it this way. And the next thing I'm going to do is fold in the tops and the sides. Same method. I'll let the glue dry for a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is sew all the way around the outside edge and then down the side so that this piece doesn't flop around. So I'll come back after I've sewn around the edges. The glue has been drying for a while, and I thought I would go ahead and just show you what it looks like sewing on it. And as long as you go slow, you take your time, you're not going to have any problems with your sewing machine. Sewing machines generally are designed to sew through several thicknesses of fabric, sometimes as thick as jeans. So just test it and see how well it sews before you actually go to sew your cover. And I may bump the camera a couple times. I've got a little tight quarters here. So basically I'm just going to put my needle close to the edge. I've got it set to a zigzag stitch, and I'm just going to stitch all the way around the outside edge of this, and then I'm going to come down and sew on top of this little fancy lace stuff. This is something that I picked up around Christmas time at Michael's. When I get to the end, I found that if I put the needle when doing a zigzag to the right and as close to the edge as I want it to be, and then rotate my page after picking up the presser foot, leaving the needle down, and then when I start sewing, it makes a nice corner on top of the stitching here. I've gone all the way around. Now I'm just going to sew down the side pieces of this trim. The next thing I'm going to do is I have a piece that is going to be the cover and little embellishment. I've printed it on laser printer paper and mounted it onto cardstock. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in the center to help hold it in place while I sew around the outside edge. And then I'm just going to take my zigzag stitch again and stitch around the perimeter of the printed piece from Calico Collage. It was a tight fit to try to get the book cover underneath my presser foot, so I've turned it around so I could work on the other side. So now I've got this piece sewn all the way around. I have a couple of little pieces that I'm making my title, and it's going to be too difficult to try to maneuver underneath the machine on top of the cover, so I'm going to sew around this just to give the stitching effect. So there's one piece that I've stitched all the way around, and there's the other piece. We'll change camera views and I'll show how I adhere this and finish the cover. All my pieces have been sewn. The next thing I need to do is adhere my little title, if you will, for the cover. And I'm just going to use Aleene's tacky glue. I sewed a piece of lace on here as well. I used a little bit of glue stick to hold it in place and then sewed it down. Well, that's the outside of my cover. So now let's do something with the inside. And what I did off camera was I took a piece of cardstock that is cut at just under, I believe under 8 1/4. Yeah, under 8 1/4, and then I did a zigzag stitch across the top just for consistency. And then I cut pieces to fit on either side, and they are 6 inches by 8 1/4. I attached a piece of fabric. I folded over the edges, used a little bit of glue stick to hold it down, and then I did a zigzag stitch all the way around on both pieces. So now it's time to adhere it to the cover. And again, I use Aleene's tacky glue. And I start with the spine piece because it's going to cover that piece, and then when I place this over the top, it'll have a nice look to it. What I like to do is put glue right down where the spine and the cover meet. So I'm going to make sure that I have plenty of glue on here to hold this piece in place. I've got a bone folder, and what I'll do is I'll press, and what that'll do is that will smear the glue underneath the paper. Some may seep out, and I just wipe it up. And then the next thing I do is figure out where the fold is here, and I will crease that. You don't want to fold your cover too soon after gluing it down. You want to wait till the glue is adhered, otherwise it will separate and buckle on you. And now it's time to adhere the side panels, and I'll do the same thing. I'll add glue all the way around the perimeter and make a zigzag down the inside of the panel. I store my glue upside down. I have a little flower pot that has a plastic bag in it just in case the lid comes off, and I make sure the lid's on and I store it upside down. That way when I'm ready to use it, the glue comes right out. So I'll line up the side panel with the same height as the center cover of the spine, and again I'll use my bone folder to help press and adhere this to the cover. I've cut a piece of paper that is the height of the journal and 2 inches wide. This is my template for punching holes in the spine and my signatures. So I'll get this out of the way. I like to use my paper cutter just so that it helps me align everything and it gets straight. Alright, so I've got my template here that I'm going to score. So I'm just lining it up. And I'll use my scoring tool. This is just a McGill scoring tool, and it's dual-ended, and I'm using the 2mm end. And I'm just going to take my pencil just so you can kind of see where the center is on this piece of paper. And then approximately 1/4 of an inch away, maybe a little bit more, I'm going to go, what is that? A little over 1/4 of an inch. Depends on how thick my signatures are, and since they're a little bit thicker, I'm going a little wider than 1/4 of an inch. Gosh, I can't talk today. And I'm going to score that. I'll make a pencil mark so you can kind of see where that is. So we're going to go right about there. And I just flip it around and make the same mark on the other side. So there is my 3 lines that I'm going to use to put my signature in. And what I'll do is I'll take this piece of paper and I'll fold it in half on that center score mark, just so I make sure I've got the center of my journal. If I don't get it straight, it won't be straight when I work in the book. And then I take this piece of paper and I fold it in half. And that is my center line mark where I will punch a hole here, here, and here. And then about, probably about 1.25 inches from each edge, I'll make a line. It doesn't move on me. And then this is where I will punch holes where these intersect. So that's my template that I'm going to use to punch holes in the spine and in the pages. I've got a couple pieces of fun foam. You can use an old telephone book, whatever, to protect your work surface. I've got my template, and to help remember where is the top, I'm going to write top, because if you punch holes this way and then this way, they won't line up. So we want to make sure that they're all going in the same direction. And what I'll do is I'll find the center, making sure that we're within the top and the bottom and the sides. And then I've got my Tim Holtz Tonic Studios craft pick. So it's another awl that, what do you call this, is retractable. So you can put it away and don't worry about stabbing yourself. And what I found is I want to make sure that I hold it not where the side where this is, because I have tendency to squeeze, and then that closes the needle back up into this device. So I hold it straight up and down and poke a hole in each of these intersections. So we're going to poke 9 holes. And if you had more signatures, you would just keep going until you had holes to hold all of your signatures. So there are the holes in the cover. I'll set that out of the way for a moment. And the next thing I'm going to do is punch holes in my signatures. I'm going to use my bookbinder's cradle to do this. If I only had a few pieces of paper, I would just punch it on my work surface. But because there's, I want to say there's over 20 pieces of paper in here. So I'm lining up my template again with the top and the bottom of my journal. And what this does is the bookbinder's cradle helps put those pages at a V so that they get a consistent hole all the way through. So I've got it lined up with the top and the bottom. I have paper clipped my pages together so they hopefully won't shift. And then I'll just poke 3 holes in the dead center. 1, 2, and 3. So now that has holes all the way through for me to sew in my signature. And I'll do this on the other 2 signatures as there are 3 signatures. It's time to attach the signatures to the cover. I like to begin in the center. I don't know why, it's just something I learned. I use a bookbinder's needle and wax linen thread, and then I will measure at least 3 lengths. 1, 2, and 3. I went ahead and added extra just so I don't have to stop and cut more. I'll start in the center of the signature and push the needle through onto the cover as well to the outside. I'll pull it up and hold on to a tail on the inside so I don't worry about it pulling all the way through. And then I find the hole at the top. Make sure I've got it. And then match it up to the pages as well. Sometimes if you can't see the hole, you have to poke it again. So now I'm in the top hole. I'll pull that needle through. Then I'll go back through the center hole on the pages and the cover. And then go down to the bottom hole in the center of the cover and the pages. And then I'll take the needle and pull up underneath that first strand and then pull these in opposite directions. I want to make sure that this is snug here on the outside as well as on the inside. And then I'll tie a square knot here in the center. I may come back later and add tassels on here. I'll show videos of that later on when I flip through the video. So there's my first signature attached to this book. So next I'm going to get the next signature and do the same procedure. Start in the center of the inside of the journal, going to the outside. I'm going to repeat the same procedure on the last signature. Well, the signatures have been sewn in, and I haven't put a closure on here. I think what I'm going to do is a ribbon closure that I'll just wrap around. I'll just show you with some seam binding here. What I'll usually do is wrap it around and tie a bow and then trim the ribbon. And then I know I have enough to keep it closed. And I'll take this piece and slip it under the binding here, and then that'll help keep it in place. But I know I want to dye this, so I want to put this in my spray box. I'm going to spray it with a little bit of either alcohol or water. In this case it's alcohol, and that'll help get the fabric wet so that when I spray it with the Tattered Angels it will soak in better. I've got two colors here. I've got Pop Rocks and Curious, and I'm just going to spray this a few times. It'll help if I turn it the right way. And I can either let this air dry or I can use my heat tool, and I'm going to use my heat tool and dry this. The ribbon is dry, so I'm just going to slip it under the middle. If I can get it to go. And I'll tie a knot on the ends. This seam binding has a tendency to unravel, so I'll just tie a little knot. Well, I guess I won't. Tie a little knot on each end. I have used a Dragonfly punch. This is a really old punch that I got years ago, and I'm going to use that on the strings. I've got a couple of different colors here punched. I'll use a little bit of Aleene's tacky glue. It doesn't require a lot. We're just dotting this a little bit, and then I'm going to lay this, kind of smear the glue around a little bit, lay the string in there, and then use the other one to make a little sandwich. Sometimes you have to play with it to get it to line up. So I'll do that on all the strings, and I'll be back. Okay, so here is my junk journal that I have made for myself, and this will be my planner. It's a bullet journal, it's a journal, and then a planner. I use the Calico Collage Dragonfly Delight for the cover and the pages that are inside here. This was a rubber stamp that I stamped on some scrap of paper, and then I used some Tulip dimensional fabric paint on the dragonfly and heart and a couple other places within the journal. And at the beginning, as I showed you, I had used a planner and then a bullet journal and then the Calico Collage image. And here is the first signature. So we've got a page to write upon. This says, if found, please return to. This was part of the planner that I took apart and I added. There's places to write for the bullet journal, so I can put my index here and write pages, which I haven't done yet, but I will do that. So there's pages for the index here, an additional journaling page. Then here is the first tab for January that has notebook paper on it, and there's a pocket here, so I can put receipts or mementos inside here. Then I made a card. It's a postcard with one of the Calico Collage Images with the full month dates on here. Because sometimes I liked a visual to look at the whole month. So I made one of these for every single month. And I may go in and make marks on these to indicate things. And then here are my first few pages of the planner. So I can write details in here. And this is the way that this whole journal is set up. I've done some Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist and stamping. I made my own stencil here. And I just sprayed the back side, so you'll see different ones like that. Here's another pocket here so I can put other things inside. With a Calico Collage image. I've made one, and I haven't finished it yet, altered paper clip for the journal for now. I figure as I use this journal, I may add more things to it, and it's really quite thick and full, and I probably should have made a bigger spine. But I think it's going to work for me, and I thought, you know, I will share it with everyone just so you can see what it looks like. It doesn't have a lot of embellishment because it's, for me, it's going to be my everyday journal. I don't want to write on top of bumpy pages, if you will. So I'm going to try to keep it pretty flat. Now, it may be that as the days pass, I may add some stuff and it'll be bumpy. So I'm just going to save this here. And I've got a pocket in the front and the back cover that I can add things to, like a to-do list, or I've picked up some of these sticky notes that they will fit right inside there. And you can kind of see there's the last page as well. And then I can tie this shut with my newly dyed seam binding ribbon. Like so. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I put together my little planner, bullet journal, junk journal, however you want to call this. I like the way it's turned out. I think it's going to be fun to use this for 2018. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, use that comment box down below. Check the description box for links to the Calico Collage images that I used today, and as well as my blog post that kind of lists the supplies and tools that I used. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. Check out the description box for links to my Facebook groups as well. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for being a great supporter of my channel here on Facebook. I appreciate every like, comment, subscription, everything that you do on YouTube. It's greatly appreciated. Have a fabulous day and happy 2018. Bye, everybody.